you feel pain like no other pain. And you know that in your life, it's going to be very difficult to come across something that's going to be even worse pain than that. But it also brings you so close to all those other people out there who have been bereaved.
A catastrophic accident nearly claimed the life of young Princess Charlotte right on the royal lawns. A jet-black Bentley barreled forward without braking, and the one who shielded the little girl with his own body to save her was Guard Sergeant David Mitchell. Yet, instead of being honored, the bloodied hero was thrown into a cell that very night under the charge of assault. The one who ordered that ruthless and absurd arrest was none other than Queen Camilla. Immediately, all security cameras were suspiciously severed, and every trace was wiped clean in a cover-up to blame the victim. Camilla arrogantly assumed her heinous crime had been buried. However, she never expected Prince William and Princess Kate to secretly infiltrate the scene. Searching through Mitchell's torn uniform, they found Camilla's death sentence. A micro-body camera disguised as a blood-stained button, capturing the entire sordid ordeal. An uncompromising confrontation was about to detonate right in the middle of a grand royal gala. When the ironclad evidence is unleashed before hundreds of eyes of the elite, what tricks will the Queen use to deny her guilt? Will the throne protect her from the absolute fury of a father who nearly lost his child? Or is this the humiliating end for a power-abusing villain? The most despicable crimes often occur in the moments when the illusion of safety is stripped away. The armored, jet-black Bentley, Queen Camilla's iconic mobile asset, suddenly and erratically changed its course. The 3-ton metal behemoth tore through the gravel divider, crushed the priceless rose beds, and aimed its sharp hood directly toward the central lawn. Its wheels churned the green grass, hurtling forward on a trajectory that showed absolutely no sign of decelerating or swerving to avoid a collision. The sole target lay right in front of the vehicle, young Princess Charlotte, bending down to pick up a small ball. The child stood frozen, her eyes wide with panic as the massive steel block bore down, eclipsing all light. Less than 20 paces away, Sergeant David Mitchell was standing guard on his shift. 8 years of service in the elite guard force did not allow him to waste even a tenth of a second to think. His honed protective instincts turned his muscular body into a moving human shield. Mitchell drove the toe of his combat boot hard into the ground, using the momentum to launch himself across the life-or-death divide. His strong arms reached out to their absolute limit, wrapping around the child's shoulders and head, pulling her tight and burying her deep into his chest. Simultaneously, he twisted his body, contorting every muscle, using his flank and broad back to block the space between the child's life and the car's merciless grille. The mechanical impact slammed directly into Mitchell's back with devastating force. The massive steel block hurled both the guard and the child, sending them tumbling across the rough grass. Mitchell's ribs snapped, pressing tightly against his chest cavity and causing excruciating pain. Fresh blood poured from the corner of his mouth, staining his uniform tunic in dark red patches. His shoulder joints ached intensely, but the arms locked around the child absolutely did not loosen by even a millimeter. Charlotte buried her head in the soldier's chest, sobbing hysterically, her body trembling violently, but completely intact. The car jolted to a halt, leaving scorched brake marks on the grass. The rear window slowly rolled down. Queen Camilla stepped out. Her sharp stiletto heels trampled the crushed petals as she took rhythmic, unbothered steps toward the collision scene. There was not a single worried glance spared for her granddaughter, who had just narrowly escaped death. There was no gesture of bending down to check for injuries. Camilla's cold, lifeless eyes simply locked onto Mitchell's muscular, convulsing body. She leaned over, her hand, loaded with sharp diamond rings, roughly reached out and snatched the blood-stained internal radio that had fallen right next to Mitchell's shoulder. The only device capable of connecting to medical support now rested firmly in the hands of the perpetrator. In stark contrast to the undeniable truth unfolding before her eyes, Camilla threw her arm up, pointing her bright red manicured index finger directly at Charlotte's face. She spoke in a steely, chilling voice, spitting out each word like a dagger, directly blaming the child for intentionally running out to block the car, obstructing and threatening the royal motorcade's route. Mitchell struggled to prop his bleeding elbow against the grass. He spat a mouthful of pooled blood onto the ground, trying to heave himself up, channeling every ounce of his remaining strength to open his mouth and protest the blatant lie being brazenly dumped on an innocent child. But before he could make a sound, Camilla raised her stiletto heel and stomped down hard on his severely injured shoulder. The cruel pressure forced the guard to collapse face first into the damp soil. With a sharp flick of her chin, she issued a command to her trusted detail of bodyguards who had just sprinted up to the scene. Two burly men in plain clothes instantly lunged forward. They grabbed Mitchell by both sides of his collar, roughly hauling his bloodied body into the air. Ignoring his convulsions from his shattered chest, they violently wrenched the guard's arms behind his back, forcefully bending his shoulder joints and locking him tight with a pair of freezing steel handcuffs. The metal cuffs bit deep into his flesh. At the same time, another group of bodyguards caught a signal from the corner of Camilla's eye. Moving as fast as lightning, they scaled the perimeter walls surrounding the lawn. Razor-sharp military daggers were drawn from their sheaths. With decisive slashes, all the copper core cables connecting the security camera system overlooking the lawn were instantly severed. Every electronic eye was blinded in a fraction of a second. The central control monitors were undoubtedly left with nothing but white static. All digital evidence, all objective perspectives had been neatly eradicated. Mitchell, the man who had just gambled his life, was lifted and thrown straight into the back of an internal police armored van under the most absurd, fabricated charge imaginable: assault and threatening a member of the royal family. The van doors slammed shut, locking the truth away in the dark. Camilla turned her back and walked away. The hem of her expensive coat brushed over the fresh bloodstains on the grass, leaving behind a perfectly orchestrated farce that turned white to black, paving the way for a lie to rule the throne. The incident report delivered to Kate and William was packaged in a crude and laughable veil of deceit. A guard showing signs of psychological instability suddenly went mad, lunging out to block and attack the Queen's car, using his body to threaten the young princess's safety. But the sharp instincts of a mother, combined with the sheer terror that had yet to fade from Charlotte's eyes, and David Mitchell's flawless 8-year record of outstanding service, were more than enough to shatter that cheap, patched-together narrative. William clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white, bulging with prominent, pulsing blue veins. He and Kate understood better than anyone else that confronting Camilla's ruthless, insidious lies could not be done with justifications, letters of complaint, or sentimental tears. They needed physical evidence, things that could be held, measured, things carrying actual destructive weight that could be smashed right into the villain's face, unmasking her before the public. As night fell, the darkness swallowing the watchmen, two dark figures secretly broke away from the main house corridors. William, wearing a dark wool coat with the collar pulled high, moved tightly against the cold stone wall. He headed straight for the impound garage located in the isolated west wing of the palace. The offending black Bentley was loosely held behind a sturdy iron fence, chained tightly with a massive, cast steel industrial padlock. Without a second of hesitation, the prince reached into his coat and pulled out a heavy-duty steel bolt cutter, a specialized tool for breaking locks. He clamped the jaws onto the thick shackle, flexing every muscle in his arms and shoulders, and squeezed with all his might. The steel blades ground together. The padlock snapped and fell to the ground. William slipped through the narrow gap in the gate and slid straight into the Bentley's stifling driver's cabin. The air inside still reeked of Camilla's signature expensive perfume, mixed with the scent of brand-new leather seats. His eyes scanned quickly over the dashboard and the center console. His strong hand decisively reached deep beneath the leather trim. Using a thin, sharp metal pry bar, he wedged it into the gap and forcefully popped off the plastic panel, concealing the entire internal electronic storage system. The car's black box, the cold mechanical heart that recorded every byte of data on the frantic engine RPMs. The pedal-to-the-metal acceleration with zero braking, and the steering angle deliberately aimed right at the victim appeared before his eyes. With a powerful, decisive yank, William tore away the tangled ribbon cables, stuffing that crucial, rectangular block of metal deep into his coat pocket. Half of the truth now rested securely in the father's palm. In another development, deep in the damp basement, completely isolated from the palace's luxury, lay the changing area for the guard detail. Kate shoved the rusty iron door open and walked in alone. The air inside was thick and suffocating, a mix of the pungent stench of medical rubbing, alcohol, sour sweat, and the metallic tang of fresh blood beginning to dry. Under the relentlessly flickering industrial fluorescent lights, Mitchell's shredded bright red uniform lay tossed haphazardly in a dark corner like a pile of worthless floor rags. Princess Kate did not hesitate or show any disgust. She dropped fully to her knees on the freezing tile floor. She plunged both bare hands straight into the crumpled, blood-soaked fabric. She tore through every fold, pressing her fingertips tightly across the tattered, embroidered cloth insignias. She was clawing around in search of the final, surviving ray of hope. Camilla had devastated the perimeter security system, severing every electronic eye on the walls. But in her arrogance, she had severely underestimated the top-secret operational protocols of the senior royal guard. Kate's fingers, gliding quickly down the lapel, suddenly stopped. At the location of the second button down from the torn collar, her touch registered an abnormal hardness. It was cold, dense, and distinctly more solid than the standard molded plastic of the other decorative buttons. Kate held her breath. She carefully pulled a sharp pair of metal tweezers from her pocket. The tip of the tweezers meticulously wiggled into the frayed stitches, patiently peeling away the outer red fabric casing. Under the dim basement lights, a micro body camera lens, barely larger than a black bean, slowly revealed itself. The tiny red dot on the side of the object was still blinking continuously. That faint light proved the hidden backup battery was still functioning, and all the memory data remained intact, undamaged by the impact. It had sat securely right on Mitchell's chest, facing straight forward, fully capturing every frame, every extreme close-up angle of the catastrophic collision, and even the villain's maliciously contorted face as she stepped out of the car. This was the sole surviving piece of evidence from the bloody purge, the undeniable trump card. Kate carefully used the tweezers to detach the tiny camera body from its mount, hiding the blood-stained button deep inside her palm. She clenched her fist tight. The mother's eyes, once filled with panic, now blazed with the inextinguishable fire of a ruthless retaliation. The sword of justice had been sharpened to its utmost edge, merely waiting for the moment to swing and sever the roots of deceit. The palace's grandest banquet hall blazed with blinding crystal lights, reflecting brilliantly off the luxurious, custom-tailored formal wear and the myriad of expensive diamond jewelry worn by hundreds of elite guests. The atmosphere overflowed with lively chatter, the clinking of glasses, and melodic chamber music from the symphony orchestra in the corner. Up on the central honors stage, draped in vibrant red velvet carpet, Camilla wore the most extravagantly magnificent gown, encrusted with thousands of precious stones. She stood there, her back perfectly straight, one hand raising a glass of premium champagne, her lips curled into an intensely proud smile, savoring the moment of absolute power, like a victor who had manipulated the entire chessboard. She was at the peak of her complacency. She was preparing to personally take the finely cast, solid gold medal of loyalty, to hand directly to the driver who had obediently floored the gas pedal perfectly in line with her vicious orders. At the same time, she raised her voice, clearing her throat into the microphone, preparing to read the official decree stripping all privileges, revoking all military ranks, and permanently smearing the honor of the traitor David Mitchell, who was currently groaning in agony inside a dark cell. The moment her hand, blazing with diamond rings, reached out, her fingers just about to brush the silk ribbon of the medal, the massive, sturdy oak doors of the banquet hall were violently kicked open from the outside. The kick was so forceful and aggressive that the metal hinges let out a piercing squeal. The symphony orchestra instantly stopped dead. The melodic music was abruptly severed by a deathly silence. William and Kate strode straight into the center. There was no bowed head in greeting, no forced social smile. The prince's face was freezing cold, rigid, and radiating murderous intent, like an iceberg preparing to crush a ship. William didn't say a word. He simply and decisively raised his right hand to signal a command. Instantly, a squad of the most loyal royal guards, fully armed, flooded into the hall in unison. They moved with military speed, decisively forming a line to lock down all exits. Metal barricades were pulled across the main and side doors. The bustling, luxurious room was immediately sealed off, transformed into a closed cage with no way out. Every smile on the guests' lips vanished. The bewildered elite backed away to the sides, automatically creating a perfectly straight, chilling aisle leading directly toward the central stage where Camilla stood. The Queen's face darkened. Her facial muscles twitched slightly. She slammed her champagne glass down on the glass table, intending to open her mouth and project her authority, using her supreme power to order these gatecrashers thrown out. But Kate completely ignored her presence and her attempts to pull rank. The princess took long, purposeful strides straight toward the audio-visual technical control desk tucked away in the corner of the auditorium. She pulled the tiny metal object from her coat pocket. Without a single wasted movement, Kate jammed the USB drive containing all the decrypted raw data, extracted directly from the button camera, straight into the central server's port. The massive crimson velvet curtain draped behind Camilla suddenly dropped to the floor, making way for the largest-sized LED projector screen. The ceiling-mounted projector flared to life with intense brightness. The blinding light reflected right into the Queen's face, which was rapidly shifting from a furious red to an utterly bloodless pale. A high-quality, incredibly sharp video, devoid of any dubbed audio, began to glow, striking directly into the eyes of the hundreds of people present in the hall. The entire hall held its breath. The audience seemed frozen in place. The violently shaking camera angle, exported from the exact position of Mitchell's chest, truthfully and mercilessly recorded every terrifying second of the crash. The wildly swaying viewpoint as the armored Bentley suddenly accelerated straight ahead without braking. The sight of Mitchell's chest and back twisting, lunging out to block it, absorbing the earth-shattering impact that made the screen shudder violently. And the most fatal point, the sword that executed all excuses and stripped away all lies. Camilla's razor-sharp, vicious, entirely emotionless face as the car door opened. The image of her coldly digging her stiletto heel down, trampling on the soldier's freshly bleeding shoulder. The image of the diamond-ringed finger pointing straight at the sobbing child's face to assign blame and slander. And finally, the most damning maneuver of all, the arrogant flick of her chin ordering the bodyguards to cover up the scene, pin down the victim, and signaling the severing of the security cameras. Every despicable act, every aristocratic facade, the fabricated nobility was stripped completely bare in broad daylight, under the light of hundreds of crystal lamps. The footage magnified every cruelest expression, every wicked frown, exposing the most brutal and disgusting truth. The hall fell completely dead, silent in absolute outrage. All that remained were panicked gasps, the sound of wine glasses shattering on the floor, and countless terrified, disgusted stares aimed squarely at the woman standing stranded on the high podium. Leaving absolutely no loophole for excuses, no document or written correction could ever whitewash this bloody video. The ironclad evidence had completely locked down every single one of Camilla's escape routes. The atmosphere in the banquet hall thickened with horror, contempt, and outrage exploding to its absolute peak. Hundreds of eyes from the powerful elite, people who just minutes ago had been flatteringly raising their glasses, were now glaring at the villain with absolute revulsion. Camilla stumbled back a step. Her trembling hands clawed tightly onto the edge of the oak table to keep from collapsing. Her lips moved constantly, quivering, but unable to utter a single sound of defense or command. The arrogance and overwhelming authority from the beginning had entirely shattered into tiny fragments. In its place was an agonizing humiliation, laid utterly bare with nothing to cover herself before the public eye. William strode up the stairs, heading straight onto the high platform. His commanding presence enveloped every angle, suffocating the surrounding space. He didn't even bother granting that woman a single contemptuous glance. The prince walked straight over to the accomplice driver, who was standing there shivering uncontrollably, sweating profusely. William reached out and violently ripped off the fraudulent gold medal he had just received, throwing it straight down onto the unforgiving granite floor. William lifted his combat boot and brought it down hard, crushing that fake symbol of honor into a mangled mess of metal. Instantly, a squad of Royal Special Forces police clad in pitch-black gear, swarmed in. Cold, heavy steel handcuffs snapped tightly onto the wrists of the driver, and the entire detail of bodyguards who had participated in destroying the evidence that morning. They were bent in half, hands locked behind their backs, and roughly frog-marched out of the hall without an ounce of leniency or face-saving grace. Kate walked slowly up onto the platform, standing inches from Camilla's face. The princess's sharp, fiery eyes saw right through the cowardly trembling of the person standing before her. There was no need for an argument, no need for a breath-wasting scolding. With a decisive, powerful, and utterly commanding motion, Kate reached out her arm and tore away the massive ring of keys bearing the symbol of Inner Palace Administrative Authority, which had been hooked onto the belt of the Queen's jeweled gown. The keychain was ripped cleanly from the sash. She slammed it down onto the floor, echoing with a harsh, sharp, metallic clatter. It was the usurpation of power through the most visceral physical act, smashing every privilege of rule. Two burly female royal guards stepped forward. Without hesitation, they wrenched Camilla's two arms, loaded with bracelets and diamonds, behind her back. They roughly stripped away her right to free movement, shoving her hard forward. Camilla was dragged out the massive doors right in her most splendid, cumbersome ceremonial gown. Dozens of smartphones from the guests were raised in unison. Camera flashes fired relentlessly, mercilessly capturing every grimacing, struggling, and deeply disgraceful moment in royal history. Below the freezing granite steps outside the palace, all of her personal belongings, the suitcases of designer clothes, and her expensive handbags had been tossed haphazardly by the guards, scattered across the damp gravel in the dark of night. The eviction, the expulsion happened instantly, decisively, ruthlessly, with absolutely no chance to turn back. The villain had lost everything in ultimate humiliation. The next morning, the brilliant dawn sunlight shone through the iron slats of the internal prison block. The metallic clack of a key sprang the heavy padlock open. Mitchell slowly stepped out. His body was tightly wrapped in stark white bandages, deep wounds still seeping blood to stain the gauze red. But his chest was held high, his back perfectly straight and brimming with pride. Waiting for him right at the end of the quiet corridor was young Princess Charlotte. In the child's hands, she tightly hugged a genuine gold medal of bravery and honor, sparkling in the sunlight. The little girl carefully stood on her tiptoes, her tiny, trembling hands personally draping the bright red ribbon of honor around the neck of her true hero. Mitchell smiled, bowing his head low to accept the well-deserved tribute. Justice had struck a fatal, bloody, yet complete blow, returning honor and glory to the innocent through the most ruthless and absolute punishment for the villain. Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.